But I did meet my current co-founder at that company who, when we shut it down, started looking for jobs, and he couldn't get a response. And this is someone who's like a 10x engineer, like people you really can't find. And almost every company would hire in a second if they got to meet him. He wasn't even getting a response back. And I was just like, what is going on out there?
Welcome back to the Human Capitalist Podcast. I am Trent Cotton, your host, and joining me today is Adam with Talent Llama. So Adam, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Trent. Happy to be here.
Well, I would attempt to do an introduction, but you've got a pretty stellar past, so I'm going to let you do the honors and sell yourself to the audience. How about that?
Oh, man. All right. Well, I'll do my best here. I'll keep it short. Yeah, so I'm a software engineer out of school and always entrepreneurial and wanted to start my own company from a young age. So out of grad school, I started working on a side project that was in the fitness space. It started out as a workout tracker. Long story short, it turned into a fitness CRM. So we kind of started going directly to consumers, and then we pivoted to B2B SaaS, and ended up in about 3,000 gyms with 50 employees, and, really grew quickly and at a good time in the market. Ran into a company that was looking to acquire vertical SaaS products, and we ended up getting acquired in 2017. So I stayed on a couple more years and moved out once we kind of mutually parted ways, and then got into the health and wellness tracking mobile app, a startup called Onyx. And it was, we were using machine learning to try to predict what you should eat and when you should go to bed and how much exercise you should do. And we built a really cool product, but unfortunately didn't really nail product market fit. We needed some extra data streams, and it was tough getting people to pay. So unfortunately we had to shut it down. But I did meet my current co-founder at that company who, when we shut it down, started looking for jobs, and he couldn't get a response. And this is someone who's like a 10x engineer, like one of those people you really can't find, and almost every company would hire in a second if they got to meet him. He wasn't even getting a response back, and I was just like, what is going on out there? And we realized that it was like a remote positions, and post-COVID, these jobs can get thousands of applications, and companies just can't keep up. So he decided to whip up a little command line interface prototype of a system that could take a job description, take a resume, and interview a candidate kind of on the go. So he showed me that, and I was also kind of thinking about what was next, and we said, we both know this would be valuable. We both hired a lot of people, like, let's build it. And that was in November of 2023. So we just crossed our year birthday. Yep. And still going strong and have a lot of cool stuff we're working on this year.
So you've hit the 7-year mark in the startup age range.
Yeah. Like dog years.
Yeah, the dog years. I didn't realize, I thought everybody was just playing whenever they said that until I started working for a high growth firm. And I picked with my CEO. I said, I looked a lot younger 3 years ago before I started here. It's been intense.
Oh yeah. It takes a certain type of person to be able to go from 0 to 1 and really get something off the ground. And it's a lot more work than it sounds like.
Well, and the fact that you did that at 20, you founded your first company at 23. That's impressive. I don't know too many people that were thinking, hey, let me start a company. It's more like, where's my next bill coming from?
Yeah, well, I actually started like on the side as a side hobby, just to see, like, can I build something from what I learned at school? And then my wife actually helped with it. So it was almost kind of like a side project where we didn't really think much of it. And then I said, let's try to turn it into a business, and just didn't give up, I'd say. It took 4 years before we made $1. So I had no idea what I was doing. And wasted a lot of time, ran into a bunch of, conflicts and, yeah. So anyway, it was super long. That's a story for another day, but
Yeah,
yeah, just
sounds like
every
it.
entrepreneurship journey, it's not this like overnight success, no matter what you see in the headlines, like those people were working for 5-10 years before, they got to where they are. And
That's
you
very
kind of
true.
have to accept that if you're going to get into a startup, that it's going to take time, and, you want to go fast, but it's just it's a long haul.
It is. Well, I love your background, not just the entrepreneurial, but deeply tech, trying to solve problems with tech. This particular podcast, I like to focus a lot on the transformation of HR into more of a human capital mindset. And I'm really excited today. Actually, I think OpenAI, or it was yesterday, because I listened to it on YouTube from what is it, Davos, however you say it. The product manager was talking about agents, and I'm like, oh, this is going to turn HR upside down, and I am here for it. So I
Mhm.
always like to ask the same couple of questions. Like the first one is, how would you view the world of human capital changing over the next maybe 1 to 5 years?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So everyone has an opinion. So I'm certainly not the end all here, but 1 to 5 years, I think we're going to just get better apps that we've already been using. They're just going to be 10 times better. They're going to do more with less. They're going to be cheaper, do more. There's still going to be people involved, managing and using them, albeit maybe at a little bit higher of a level than they used to have to. But yeah, I think a lot of the new AI stuff is around the fact that we can kind of outsource human reasoning into our apps now, where before you had to like define all the logic. If someone says this, say this. If someone says that, return with
Right.
this. Now it's just, respond like an expert in that topic would, right? And
Hmm.
and the system can figure out the rest. So um, yeah, I also think a lot of companies are hesitant to change. Bigger organizations are always slow moving when it comes to this stuff. So even if they
Right.
want to use it, it could take them 3 to 5 years to like go through the change management and the transition from an old system. That's something we've realized a bunch in the enterprise world. Changing systems is hard. So it'll happen at some point, because I think we're going to have to migrate to a world where we're doing less of this monotonous computer work, like repetitive, monotonous computer work. There's just no reason for people to do that anymore. That doesn't mean we don't have valuable skills to offer in other ways. It's just like, sending the same email to 100 people. You don't need to click
Yeah.
send 100 times. Like, we're really
Hmm.
just trying to make life better for the day-to-day work we're doing with all these systems.
And well, I think the kind of the other thing that's been really interesting, because I am nowhere. You have probably forgotten more about software development than I know, and I'm okay with that. My brain just doesn't work that way. I understand logic. I like logic. Always like technology. One of the things that's been really interesting for me to watch and also participate in is this whole no code movement of, all these different platforms that are out there that you don't really need to be a souped up software developer to come up with kind of a basic app or even a basic agent automation workflow. How do you see that
Mhm.
changing kind of the workforce?
Yeah. So I think the no code, like if you want to build your own agent, there are going to be no code tools to do that. I still think that those are good for kind of like prototyping and testing
Totally.
out ideas. But when you turn it
Hmm.
into like a production system or something like that, you're just always going to need more. Like it's going to have to be built by professional developers for in the short term, definitely 1 to 5 years. But I think of it as like orchestration versus like task completion.
Makes sense.
So you have to think about, like, let's say I had, 1,000, mini workers that can do whatever I tell them. How would I organize them? And what would how can I give them instructions at the most, like the easiest to understand level for both of us, right? Without having to design, you know, the details. And I think So people that can kind of understand like what the end goal is of their objective, and how to get there as efficiently as possible, that skill is going to become really valuable. Whereas, again, like just going through motions and clicking the same buttons over and over again, I don't think we're going to be doing a lot of that for much longer.
No, that makes sense. What do you think are some of the biggest obstacles for AI to become more prevalent and more embraced in HR?
Yeah, just like trust and being able to address the kind of fear and the risk of using AI. So there's definitely risk in using AI if it's kind of some random model that's, untested, or, if you just like give ChatGPT to your whole company and let them do whatever they want, you might run
Not a
into
good
some
idea.
problems. So companies want to have constraints. They want to leverage the power, but they need the constraints. So things like SOC 2 compliance, third-party bias auditing, those are some things you can do to assure that your system is always working consistently, and it's never going to ask a question differently based on someone's name or something like that. So we can kind of go through those audits now and prove that our systems can do that. So I think that makes HR teams much more kind of like, okay, if you're going to cover that side of it, now we can actually use this technology, and there's a huge desire to leverage AI. So, I think the more they see their peers doing it, as in any industry and in any, whenever there's new technology, like there's going to be early adopters, slow other adopters, and then eventually all your buddies are using it that do the same thing you do, and you're like, I need to use this or I'm going to get left behind. So I think, over the next 5 years, we're going to be getting into that phase where, like, if you don't use it, you're going to be kind of an outlier. Versus now, it's more like an outlier to be fully using AI in everything you do.
And, in the HR world, I would probably guess that a lot of them are familiar with AI, but they associate ChatGPT with AI, which, I mean, it is. But can you explain to for a non-technical audience the difference between agentic and non-agentic AI? Because I think there's a huge distinction there.
There is, and there's a lot of different ways to a lot of different perspectives. I try to kind of, the simplified take on it is, let's say, so instead of having to click buttons to get things done, so you want to, if you want to try to sell someone your product, before you had to, put them into a CRM, send them an email, wait for them to respond, look at what they said, think about whether or not you want to send them another email, or maybe you have a different message you need to think about. There's a back and forth. Eventually they want to schedule a demo, so you'll give them your Calendly link. They're going to schedule. It'll be on your calendar. So you still had to do a lot of the manual work to kind of get the demo booked, right? So in an agentic world, we would just say, hey, here's the person I want to schedule a meeting with. Go book it. So you're cutting
like
out,
having another employee almost.
Yeah, they're like mini, services that you have kind of an unlimited amount of. You're going to tell them to go out and do something and bring you back the results, right? And those things can be really simple, or they can be very complex, right? And eventually, as the AI gets better, it's going to be, kind of mind-blowing at what you're going to be able to ask it to do, and then what it brings back to you. But I still think we all use apps. It's still all on your browser. Like, we're not going to be in this, like, where there's like robots flying around everywhere and like doing it. So it's still all going to be user interfaces and user experiences, making this stuff really simple to use, making it safe to use, and giving people the power without them having to become, coders or developers, right? And letting them leverage this stuff.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's talk a little bit about Talent Llama, and I always like to get into I call it the genesis question of what problem were you trying to solve? And you already kind of led into it a little bit, but I want you to unpack it a little bit more for the audience, because it's a pretty interesting story.
Sure. So we have dove into the problem of high volume hiring fairly and efficiently. So yeah, it comes down to some big companies and popular brands just get slammed with hundreds and thousands of applicants every week. They need a way to assess who they should talk to. And historically, companies will either hire a ton of recruiters to review resumes and or use AI keyword matching to kind of filter resumes and use that resume as the decision-making document of whether I should talk to someone or not. And there are a lot of issues with that because, one, people can say whatever they want on a resume. Nowadays, you can generate a perfect resume. The information might be stale, or it might be, experience they've had 5 years ago. They might have done new things that aren't on their resume that you might be interested in. So we look at the resume as like a conversation starter. And then we actually will have conversations with those candidates using an AI interviewer. So the big problem, and what that allows is you get to make a decision based on a conversation about what they know in real time. And then it's also the evaluations are completely, unbiased. So everyone's getting the same evaluation the same way. It's only based on their responses. So you're left with a ranked list of qualified people to then start scheduling your calls with and talking to them in person versus like a pile of resumes that you have to start sifting through.
That makes sense. So, you kind of touched on bias, and we already talked a little bit about it. That is probably the 4-letter word. Whenever I'm speaking at a conference or something, it inevitably comes down to, how do you manage bias? How do you manage bias? How do you, from not going too technical, but on the back end, there's making sure that you don't have bias by asking questions consistently among all candidates. But are there other aspects of bias that you try to mitigate whenever you're building a platform like this?
Yeah. So we, when it comes to bias, we made a decision early on where the system that does the evaluations only has access to the transcribed responses that people say. So it doesn't have the resume, it doesn't know their name, it doesn't know anything about their profile. It's just going to look at the competency that it's evaluating. Did their responses demonstrate knowledge? So that's one way, to kind of separate the system where it can't even see that information when it's doing something. When it comes to the question generation, so one of the concerns is, okay, we have someone's resume, we can see their name, we might be able to, determine their gender from that. And are the questions we're asking different, based on that person's name, right? So that's where we use a company like Fair Now, who's they're doing third-party bias audits. Yeah, you've heard, Guru. Okay,
yeah.
Literally everyone I bring it up knows him.
Everybody knows Guru, man. He is, he's speaking, I think, at Transform. I talked to him last week. We're kind of looking to do some partnership with him, and I'm actually bringing him on the podcast too, because he is. I tell him all the time. I said, you are probably one of the most energetic and conversational compliance people that's technical that I've ever met in my life. Like, you're a purple unicorn,
He makes compliance exciting somehow.
He really
I don't know how he does.
He's so cool. Sorry. I just as soon as you said Fair Now, I was like, oh,
great.
That's good.
I'm glad. Yeah. So we're using. I mean, that's really what you have to do. You need a third party expert like him, and just evaluate, like run the tests, make sure that the questions are consistent, and basically they certify you as they made it past all our testing, and this is a good system, and it's not going to be biased.
Well, we both should send him an invoice for giving him a plug.
Yeah. Hey, I'm happy to. He's helping us out, and we're working together. So but you can definitely you should ask him for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, if you are listening, and one of the questions that you do have is, who can I bring in as a partner? Fair Now, if you just go and search YouTube, you'll see him speaking. He's very knowledgeable, and also too, you can break it down for people who are not deeply technical. So definitely check him out. So you work with a number of different sized organizations. Do you find that some, based on size, are there certain levels of organization that are like all in on AI? Let's try it, and then maybe the other end is extremely risk averse?
we're finding most companies are at least in a discovery phase and interested in seeing what it can do for them. It's really for us, the size does matter because we just, there's more likelihood that you have high volume if you're a bigger organization and you have more job openings. So we don't really, we don't see any difference in interest based on size. I think it's just, the problem we're solving. If you're a small, company, you only have one open job, like maybe it's not going to be as impactful on your KPIs as another company that has 20 recruiters and 10,000 applicants a week. They're going to see massive productivity improvements. So yeah, but at the same time, it is a new way to kind of start the top of the funnel experience for a candidate, and you can respond right away once they apply. You don't really have to wait for anybody. There's no scheduling with that person, so they can just take the interview on their own. So it's actually a really kind of modern, streamlined approach to the initial application.
So do you think that there are other implications and other aspects of HR that like a technology like yours could be used, just maybe in a different way? I'm thinking like learning development, internal certifications.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Things like that.
Any type of like questionnaire where you want, instead of a multiple choice answer or kind of an open-ended text box, you can actually ask questions and follow up with them. So we've definitely thought, about some other verticals where it would make sense, but the focus right now is on HR and recruiting and that, initial screening process, and just having like a really easy plug it in, use it, turn it off if you don't want to. It's very lightweight, and trying to keep it simple so that people like using it and it's actually helping them. The other thing is like showing you analytics of how it's working, and making sure that you are seeing, oh man, all my applicants actually like this, and look how fast we're getting qualified candidates now. We don't have to do anything. We're just kind of waiting for them to come to us. So we like those aha moments.
Yeah, I mean the analytic aspect of it, I'm glad you brought that up because, in the example that you gave, the company survey, getting a grade of 1 to 5 is great. The quantitative aspect is great, but a lot of times the real meat and the symptoms of what's going right and what's going wrong sits in that text data. So the ability, I think, for, a platform to be able to come in and add that extra layer of saying, hey, just kind of talk to me conversationally. How are you feeling about the role? How are you feeling about your manager? And then being able to aggregate that and doing, sentiment analysis and all the other stuff. To me, that's going to be the fun part, is really understanding the pulse of the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Like unstructured data, we haven't been able to query it and ask questions about it. And now with these LLMs, you can say, here's a whole conversation, like, tell me where they talked about, making a sale to an enterprise customer, or, how often are those customers mention, or applicants mentioning that they used JavaScript at their last job. And, you basically can just ask whatever you want and get a good answer. And that's the beauty of these LLM models, is they can just read for you and kind of give you what's important back, right?
Yeah. And to me, it's really, when used correctly, you're actually spending more time with the human and less time doing a lot of the analysis and things like that. Because I'm an avid note taker, whether I'm doing a performance coaching or I'm doing an interview. If I don't write it down, it doesn't retain. And I blame my mother for sending me to a Montessori school the first couple of years, because it's like it has all 5 senses have to be engaged for me to actually be concentrating.
For
but
sure.
I always feel like I am not looking at the camera, or I'm not really engaging the candidate. And I don't want to do that, but then I don't want to sacrifice, why is this candidate better than this person? So having something come along is fantastic. Now, with your system, does it just kind of sit alone in a certain part of the process, or does it integrate? Like, kind of walk me through that.
Yeah, so we really want to just kind of fit into whatever workflow you're already using. So most of our customers will have this be the very first step. So after someone submits an application, they're typically using an ATS to collect the initial application, and then we can set up webhooks or kind of automated notifications that come to Talent Llama and say, just got a new applicant, invite them to the interview. We have an email invitation that you can, it's like a really easy editor to make it look nice. And that's kind of your new, thanks for applying. Here's the first step. We use this AI tool to get to know you. And it's going to help kind of, be efficient with both of our time, take it at your convenience. You can set limits if you want, of course. And then once they take the interview and finish it, we push all the results back to the ATS. So you can also change their stage. So if you want to make a decision right in Talent Llama, you can just kind of move them to the next stage and go to the next candidate. But you're welcome to just make those decisions in the ATS as well.
Okay. So I would get the results and everything in the ATS if that's how I have it programmed.
Yep. And we're integrated with most of the popular ATSs, and we also add new integrations for free if you have a system that we don't integrate with. Yeah. So.
Oh, that's nice. Because there are a lot of products out there, and it's, hey, we'll integrate, but then by the time you look at the fee, you're just like, I'll just let it sit alone. I'll do the manual, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of getting a product like that.
And integration has to be part of the package. It's kind of, we know how important that is. And we take that. Both of myself and my co-founder, Ben, have both developed a ton of integrations also. So we really tried to make that a pleasant experience and, one click and easy setup. And
that is the key. Because that increases the adoption, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. We don't want to make companies have to completely change their workflow. We want to just fit in wherever they see fit.
Yeah. There's a couple of companies that asked for advice and they were like, well, we'll just get them to change this. I said, good luck with that. Good luck with that.
Well, when change management is a whole process at the company, it's going to be something to get them to switch, right? It's not just going to be an easy yes.
Now, do you find, so I apply for a role and then I get this email back and it says, hey, take part in this assessment. Talking to candidates, and I've got, unfortunately, a lot of people I know that are out in the workforce, it's kind of a mixed bag as far as they have a love-hate with it. They're kind of glad, like, oh, wow, I actually get to, have the first stage of an interview to try and further sell myself beyond a resume. And then others are like, that's so impersonal. Like, what are you seeing? Because I'm sure you see a lot on the back end.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you think it's impersonal, it's probably because maybe you don't necessarily need that job and you're being asked to come and apply to that job by a recruiter. But if I was applying for a job and I really wanted it, I would prefer to get a quick response and like a next step versus going into a black hole and never hearing from someone. So if you're able to give a human personal response to every single applicant, more power to you. But I do think there could be better uses of your time also, because you're going to end up talking to a lot of unqualified people if you do it that way. So it's really just trying to I see it as being respectful of both parties' time, the applicant and the recruiter, because we're going to get the skills vetting out of the way on your time. Let me know when you're done. Once you're done, we can determine if it makes sense to schedule a 30-minute call and really get to know you face to face. So yeah, we think that's kind of the right way to do it. But we totally get that some people think it's antisocial, or they think it's like, they don't really care about me. But look, real people can be biased and not care about you too, right? Sometimes. So we like to assume like the humans are always perfect and the robots are always bad, but it's somewhere in the middle, right? It's a spectrum of, if this thing can do 90% of what I can do, might not be perfect, but it's going to be an overall better experience, right? And that's really what we're going for here. We don't do avatars. We don't do one-way video, because we know that creeps people out when you're like under a microscope. So we've taken the voice only approach, and it's just, you can push to talk and say your answers, but there's no video. We might add it as an option because we do get asked sometimes for it, but the candidates really don't like that in general. So that's what we've seen, is that like kind of one-way video, is because you end up having to be a performer versus like when I'm talking to you right now, we're just talking and I can just be myself. But when it's just me kind of looking at myself, that's a different, people don't actually act that way when you're with them. So it's not a great assessment of how they are in that anyway.
No, that makes sense. I tell people all the time that this kind of conversation is second nature for me. Like it's easy. The number of times that I am recording something like a walkthrough or something, anytime I'm doing the video content, it's usually on the weekends. I always tell my husband, put your AirPods in. I don't want you to hear, how many times I screw up or mess up or, get angry. A lot of times I just get angry and I curse a lot, so I can understand, from the candidate point of view that, just being some stress. So it's really interesting that you do just the voice aspect of it. I posted something, I believe it was last week, from JT O'Donnell, a conversation that she and I had where we were talking. Her bold assessment is that the resume is dead, just no one knows it, and she's sticking to it. And I thought it was a great conversation because, quite frankly, if you look at my resume, it doesn't make a lot of sense until I'm able to actually tell the story. And then you see there is a common thread through there. One of the comments that I got, or actually I got one comment and about 10 in-mails, largely saying that, they kind of felt like the video interview and AI interview had bias against those who are neurodivergent. And, I did have to tell a couple of them, I'm like, you're speaking to someone with ADHD. So I can empathize. I'm there with you. I mean, do you hear any of that, or is that just kind of like some anxiety from not being completely aware of what's available?
Yeah, I haven't, we haven't run into that yet, where someone like declined because they thought that was an issue. You can turn on, if they just don't want to talk to kind of like an automated product, then companies should always offer like, hey, you can decline this and we'll give you a phone call. And we actually have a way where you can decline the interview and give a reason, so that in case that does happen, you can at least track and know why. But yeah, there should, in some states, I'm sure it's like a law, but and this is actually a good point to bring up, but you have to be able to offer other ways of communication if they can't do something like this. But it's voice based. We can turn on audio, and like, it's so if you have trouble seeing, you can use it. If you have trouble hearing, then you probably would need to have another method.
No, that makes sense.
So but these things always come up.
Yeah, it just really kind of caught me off guard. I mean, the comments were not as bad, but just kind of one of the in-mails, I just asked him. I said, "Did you listen? One, did you listen to the clip? And two, did you go and watch like the full episode? Because everything that you're saying, that's not the stance that we took in the video at all." And he goes, "Well, no, I just saw the title." I'm like, "Then watch the video, man. We kind of unpack it a little bit." So to me though, it just kind of signals that there is still this, what's the word I'm looking for? There's so many people out of work. There's such a high level of anxiety and frustration with the process that I kind of feel like AI may become the scapegoat if it's not done correctly.
Look, if you have a candidate that gets rejected or couldn't get the job, they're going to be more likely to, probably put you down or say the process was bad. I think that's going to happen regardless of what you use.
Yeah,
and
even
if you do real phone calls with a real person, you're going to get those kind of responses. Like, so yeah, I get that. I think we need more good jobs available for people that are going to kind of leverage these new tools. And there's definitely a fear, like this thing, and I'm a software engineer. Like almost every job at a computer you could argue it's going to be replaced, or there's going to be better AI tools to do those things. So we all need to kind of embrace it and just say, look, we just need to learn. There's going to be new jobs available and new ways of doing things. And you have to be kind of okay with not knowing exactly how that's going to play out, but just be ready for it. Right. And just try new things. That's really what it comes down to. And don't be so averse as if they're, these like evil tools. Right. So yeah, like, there's a lot of sci-fi movies out there that I think scared people into being hit. There's some of that, and but it's a crazy world. Like I'm all about it, but I also think there are risks if we don't use it carefully, and that's on the companies and the vendors. It's their responsibility to like understand the kind of power that you're giving people and like put those guardrails on so they can't hurt themselves or do something they don't want to do with it.
I agree. And I do want to pull out one statement that you said of having those honest conversations of, hey, there are new jobs coming. You need to get ready for it. I would venture to say not a lot of leaders are having that. They're thinking that, but they're not actually having those conversations. And I think this is where those in the human capital world, we've got to step up. If the managers aren't having those conversations, we need to be having those conversations and be pretty transparent with our employee base of saying things are changing. Let's talk about how we can upskill and reskill you.
Absolutely.
So interesting, and this might be too sci-fi. This might just be my overly curious mind, but there's been a lot of data. Trying to remember, I think it was Gartner, and there was one from McKinsey, and it was talking about the top skills in 2025, and soft skills was in the top 10 for one or both of them. And it was kind of surprising to me of this resurgence of soft skills. Do you think that we are currently or will be soon at a point where AI would be able to judge or assess someone's soft skills?
We're there because Talent Llama can do it. So a soft skill is still a skill. So as long as there's a way to demonstrate what being, competent in that skill is, then we can test for it and evaluate it, right? So team building, communication, accountability. You can ask people to describe situations where they had to hold someone accountable, and our system will say, well, tell me what happened, right? What were the specifics of that? And you're forced to tell a story or an experience about how you held someone accountable, right? And then we can assess, was that a legitimate story? Did that make sense and all add up? Or was it like a bunch of buzzwords that, where this person didn't actually know what they're talking about? Right. And so, it can assess soft skills. I think what people need to assess is like, can they look me in the eye and have a conversation? Can they present well when they needed to be at this interview? And just like the basic human, if you want to work with someone else, just kind of being comfortable with that person before you make them an offer. But the skills side of it, really, there's no need to talk through, as a recruiter, at least, maybe as the hiring manager or the final decision maker, you're going to want to dig into more, technical details. But as a recruiter, there's no need to spend time doing that if you have other more valuable things you could be doing, right? Like sourcing better candidates or preparing for the next call, right? Like you said, and really taking a full 30 minutes to evaluate this candidate's background before I get on the phone with them. So we can have higher quality conversations and better quality activities by stopping those things we're doing.
Well, but I mean, someone with your pedigree, I can ask you how many years of experience do you have with React, with machine learning and blah, blah, blah. I would so much rather have something that is a lot more skilled at looking at your coding and giving me an evaluation, because you may go, I've been doing this for 10 years. I'm a senior, I'm a principal, but then I get the assessment and your coding tells me that you're actually a mid to a senior, so it helps me be able to kind of really dig in and say, okay, well, kind of walk me through. You've moved a lot. Now it kind of makes sense why you've moved a lot. But for someone who's not technical, you gave a perfect example of the behavioral questions that everybody just loves to ask. How does the technology, you mentioned, it goes and it says, hey, this is a good answer, or it assesses. Can you unpack, without getting too technical and losing me, but can you unpack, like,
Yeah.
how does that technology know that? To me, that's fascinating.
Yeah. So you define what you want your applicants to be able to demonstrate that they
Okay.
know. So, and the great thing about soft skills is they mean something different in every company. So we're forcing you to say, what does accountability mean at your company, or what type of
Okay.
trait of accountability are you looking for in this job requirement? So you can say, must be able to give direct feedback to a junior staff member, and track performance metrics on subordinates, and then that is going to translate back into accountability, right, for you. So it lets the company define what those things mean in detail, and then we use that as the basis for our questions and for our evaluation of their answers.
Okay, that makes a
That
lot of
makes
sense.
sense. Yeah.
No, it makes
It's
a
a
lot of
different
sense.
way to think about it. Yeah. It's a requirements first and not a questions first approach.
And it reminds me of the book. It came out, I want to say 2009, 2010. It's called The Who Interview. And it goes through exactly like that. Like, what are the competencies that you're looking for? And it makes the hiring manager really kind of drill down and say, I need analysis, which is defined as, and
Yep.
to me, I kind of use it whenever we're especially building new jobs. The tech skills are fine. You need 5 years of this, 6 years of that. That's fine. But if I send someone like that, they're not qualified, and they're not qualified because they're missing a competency, and we haven't agreed on that competency, and we can't agree on the definition, then we're just going to chase
Oh
ourselves. So
yeah.
it sounds
Yeah.
like you're kind of following that, just in a lot more updated format.
Yeah. And also the environment matters, right? Like if you're going to be the second developer at a startup versus the 50th
Totally.
developer at Google, there's a heck of a lot of difference in those jobs, right? Even though they're both developer jobs. Those requirements are going to be completely different, right? Maybe for the same topics, right? Accountability means completely different things at a startup versus a huge corporation. So,
Right. Well,
yeah,
and
these are
another great,
that's where.
and I'm
What's that?
sorry to interrupt you, but like, you've used accountability. Let me use a different one, self-starter.
Yeah.
So a self-starter at a startup to high growth company means you wear several different hats, probably a lot of cross-functional opportunities. Self-starter at a Fortune 100, Fortune 500 company means that I don't have to train you a lot because you know how to go and find the manuals. It's the same word, but two totally different definitions,
Exactly. It's like, yeah, it's more like hands off at a big company,
Right.
right? And like they'll just do
Right.
it out. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's so true, and that's where the fine tuning comes in, and we try with Talent Llama to expose that to you. Like that's where we want the human input to drive these interviews, and then you shouldn't have to really mess with anything else if you can just think about the interview from that perspective.
Cool.
Yeah.
So before we get into rapid fire, like you're so connected to this, but like kind of looking forward, when it comes to AI and its impact on the workforce and on HR in general, what's something that you're like keeping an eye on that you're really excited about?
And I think, so I see kind of the HR tech recruiting, we'll call it an assembly line, but you need like sourcing, you're going to need screening, you need live interviewing, and then you kind of move into the like making an offer, actually the HRIS, right? Or like, post-hire, that's
onboarding.
whatever it is. But I think there's going to be kind of a consolidation of sourcing, screening, and live interviewing, and it's just going to become more and more agentic, right? We've talked about this. So there's still many steps happening on the sourcing side and the screening. And, we've streamlined screening, I think, really well. But again, we're just one piece of that whole puzzle. So I think as time goes on, you're going to see apps that try to do all of those things for you. So you can kind of target people, you can set up interviews, you can, vet them in multiple, in-person AI, kind of build your pipeline however you want, and then the rest I'll leave to somebody else to after that. But that's where we're focused, kind of on that, like finding a prospect to like making an offer, that phase. So yeah, I think it's just going to continue to consolidate down until maybe one day it's just prompts, or you just say like, hey, I need a new developer, and a perfect one shows up. I think that might be a little
dream world.
sci-fi still too. I don't know how close we are to that, but
Well, but I don't know. There are I think it was Walmart that used used I want to say they used Paradox, but don't quote me on that. But someone had applied. They had a text interview. They had a phone screen with a version of AI. The results were sent to the hiring manager. Hiring manager looked and said, "Yes, this is who I want." AI engaged them, extended the offer. They accept, and then that's when the human came in and said, "Okay, on your first day, this is what you
wow,
need." And I had a one-on-one with a CEO of a HR tech this week that's kind of on the sourcing side. And he and I were talking about kind of the future. And I told him exactly what you just said. I really see the future as the talent advisor can actually be an advisor because they're engaging the agents to do all the time consuming things, and they're really focused in on the real value add. Everything from the sourcing, like you said, to the assessment, which you all do, managing and interviewing, all the way through onboarding, and then learning
mm-hmm.
picks up from there. And I think there's a whole nother level of agents there. So yeah, I'm
100%. Oh yeah, post hire is a whole other ballgame, and performance management and benefits management and yeah, onboarding, training, learning and development. I mean, I think this you'll see the same kind of thing where you're going to have kind of more abstraction and more kind of orchestration in these apps versus kind of just like clicking and moving things around and sending messages and doing all those kind of like tedious computer things that we've all been doing
well,
for the
and
past whatever.
the
Yep.
reasoning of it just like to me in the last 90 days, just the increased level of some of these models. Internally working on a project to create our own AI university, and I was talking to my counterpart today, and I told her, I said, it's funny. 3 years ago, this project plan that you and I are working on, along with our engineering and CTO, it would be a year before we would get to this second step. Now I'm looking at, I think we can get there in a month because I can do a lot of the legwork using deep research, using, Notebook LM,
Mm-hmm.
some of these tools that are easy, not easy, they're effective.
Yeah.
And, the conversation that she and I were having, she's like, that's going to affect a lot of jobs. I said, it already is. A lot of companies are looking at this.
Yeah.
This is a lot more efficient.
Yep.
So
100%. Yeah. I mean, if you think about what it took to build a software app, even 10 years ago, like we couldn't have done what we did with Talent Llama 10 years ago because you had to build so much more from scratch. And, it's kind of like we keep getting better and better components to use to build all this stuff. And it gets easier and easier as time goes on. So,
yeah,
yeah, that's happening in every industry. It's pretty cool.
yeah. And the product manager for OpenAI spoke at Davos. He was interviewed by the Wall Street Journal in one of those little open sessions, and he brought up something that it took him 18 months to get from ChatGPT 3 to ChatGPT 4, and it's now taken him 3 months to go from what three or is from 2 to 3, or they're getting ready to release. I can't remember what version, but he just said, what
Yeah.
took us 18 months to do, we just now did in 3, and we're already testing 4. So it's mind blowing.
Yeah.
So but
Hey,
you're in the
we're all
thick
just
of
here
it.
for the ride, right? We'll see
Yeah,
what happens with all that stuff.
yeah. So let's move into rapid fire because I could pick your brain on technology probably for another hour, but I know you're busy. So rapid
Yeah,
fire. What is a book that changed your perspective on business?
yeah, this might be like a common answer, but The Hard Thing About Hard Things, Ben
Mm,
Horowitz, just kind of opened my eyes to how hard it actually is. And yeah, I think a lot of people think it's like a glamorous, like easy job, and it's not. So if you wonder why, you can read that book and just see all the issues that come up when running a business.
yeah. I told my CEO not too long ago that I've been working since I was 17. And one thing I always prided myself on is I could outwork anyone and outproduce anyone until I met him. Like for me to tell someone I need you to turn it off so that everybody can kind of rest, it says a lot. But it does take a very different mindset to do what you are doing and do it every day. So hats off to you and everybody else that kind of took that leap and decided to found a company. Um, What is a favorite
Same to you.
podcast or series?
Yeah, so I'm Making Sense, Sam Harris,
Okay.
and All In is another one.
Hmm.
I listen to the Fifth Column too. That's a decent one. But yeah, I typically stick with like current events, and I don't read a ton of news or anything. So I try to get a few different perspectives from people that seem trustworthy and
And
are high up on the list. So
that's getting harder and harder as the
I
years go
mean,
on.
yeah, we all have our information diets of who we're
Oh my
listening to, and
gosh.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
It's frustrating. It's almost like you're writing a college paper and you're having to cite different sources to validate whatever I feel that way if I'm watching any kind of a news channel. It's like, all right, well, this is right. Let's look at the left. Let's try to find somewhere in the center. And the truth is between the three of them. And it's just exhausting. I'll have to check those out because I like very unbiased. Like, here's the news, you make of it what you need.
Yeah, I think they're all pretty clear thinkers. I mean, yeah, Sam Harris is I've always liked him. I just think he's a super smart guy, clear thinker. Yeah, and then the All In, the four guys in there are like insanely successful, and they just know a lot about what's going on in the economy and politics, and
I
so are
love
they right on
conversations.
everything? I'm sure not, but hey, it's like we got to pick and choose who we get it from. So
Awesome. Well,
yeah,
if someone wanted to engage with you or learn more about you and Talent Llama, where would they be able to do that?
yeah, we're on LinkedIn, probably too much, but yeah, Ben
No,
and
I
I
love
are
your
there.
content, by the way. I love the
Oh,
content.
thanks. We try to keep it a little bit refreshing, and
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, LinkedIn is like the main place. We do a little bit on X, but not really a lot. So yeah, follow Talent Llama, the company, or Ben and Adam, the two founders.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then what's a one-liner to close you out for this session?
Yeah, I mean this stuff. I mean, I don't know if I'm a quote maker, but I've heard this a lot of times, and I think it really is like the main takeaway of the whole current situation, which is AI is not going to take your job, but someone using AI
Mm,
will.
I like
And
that.
basically, you need to be the person that learns like how to use this stuff if it's relevant. It's not relevant to every single job, but for the majority of us that sit behind the computer and do our work that way, just yeah, be open to trying new stuff. You might be surprised at how much it improves your day to day work. These things are meant to be helpful and make life better. So yeah, like let them do that.
Yeah. And just try. You're not going to screw anything up. So trust me, if
No,
anybody would have screwed something up, I would have done it by now. So Adam, thank you so
yeah,
much. I learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone listening did as well. And I will probably have you back on, but maybe just on the channel, and we'll do a demo of Talent Llama in case someone is interested in learning more.
awesome. I'd be happy to. This was super fun. Thanks, Trent.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Adam. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Human Capitalist. This channel is all about community, so comment, subscribe, and join the conversation. This is Trent Cotton, your human capitalist, signing off. Remember, invest in yourself, own your potential, and keep building your own human capital. I'll see you next time.